Okay. Hey, everybody. This is so great to be here. It's, I think as everybody has said, oh man, I wish we were in New Mexico together, but still wonderful to still be here and still get to share our stories. So my name is Candice Czubernat, and I am the founder of the Christian Closet. What is the Christian Closet? Probably a lot of you hopefully have already heard of us, but we are a team of LGBTQ counselors and coaches, and we do online therapy and coaching and spiritual direction. And I would say probably all of us are sort of living our dream job when we get to meet with all of you. I know for me, being gay and Christian was such a huge part of my own journey. And so we get to journey with folks online from all over the world around themes of coming out and being the intersections of queer and Christian. So this is 4 of my team before you. And we have 13 and growing. So also if you're in the mental health field and you're looking for an amazing team to be a part of, please message me. Always looking for folks. But today's panel, we're going to talk about coming out, of course, and you know that because you are here. Oh my gosh. So what we know about you folks who are listening is that you are amazing and brave because you are here. That is it, period. It's easy to know that about you. Because when I think about coming out, I get sweaty and my palms get sweaty. And I remember that feeling of I'm going to jump. I feel like I'm jumping off of a cliff. And I hate heights and I hate jumping off of cliffs. So anxiety essentially is what I'm talking about. And I've been out for over a decade. So that says a lot about what the process of coming out is like, and even just thinking about it. With that said, we want to honor where you're at. So our hope is that you wouldn't feel any kind of pressure to be anywhere that you're not. And as we share our thoughts and experiences, our desire is simply that it would give you hope and a place to maybe think through things, that you wouldn't need to be somewhere that you're not. So I'm going to have my amazing team of people introduce themselves. Of course, your name, how you identify, where you live, how old you were when you first started to realize you weren't so straight, and what is on your phone screensaver. So let's just start at the top. Molly, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Molly Downs-Stoller. I go by she, her. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I wasn't, really didn't know I was straight until I was 38. And I met my wife and said, oh, those are the feelings that everyone talks about. And she's a girl. That's different. And yeah, now she's my wife. And I have a picture. Do you want us to show our screensaver? I have a picture of my dog, Andrew. That's Andrew.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you showed us that.
Yes.
Okay, John.
Hey, everyone. My name is Dr. John Pryor. It's a new title. I'm trying to work with it. And I'm a licensed professional counselor. I first knew that I had same-sex attraction when I was in the 4th grade. I think I was like 10 years old. And then I didn't come out until I was probably 20 years old. Yeah. And what's on my phone background is a notification saying that I have this meeting right now. And like this lovely kind of like tree forest experience. It's kind of magical.
That is super magical. I think we might have a similar case too.
No way. Yeah, that's fun.
Oh my God, Molly's green too.
Yes.
Okay, Kate.
Hey everyone, my name's Kate. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm a licensed professional counselor with a degree in clinical counseling. Yeah, I should have been clued into being gay when I was like kissing my best friend in middle school, but I was not. So I didn't come out until a little bit later in my late 20s when I started dating. But the background on my home screen is painfully boring, and one of the stock background or lock screens, you can't really see it, but I don't know, I just found it to be calming, so I left it there.
Good. Alicia.
Hi, I am Alicia Brock. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. And I had a little inkling in college that I might be gay, but then went very deeply into the closet for a long time. And then came out at 38 when I divorced my husband. And the screensaver on my phone is this, you can see that. But it's got a thing that says, everyone wants to be the sun to brighten everyone's life, but why not be the moon to shine in someone's darkest hour? So.
Oh my God, I love that. And Rob.
I'm Rob with 2 B's. I am in Michigan. I own a counseling practice in Michigan, and I don't know if I ever would have admitted to myself that that I was gay, but I sure did like He-Man's muscles when I was a kid. Those big cartoon muscles. So I think there was always this awareness that there was something about me that was different than the other boys, that I kept a big secret. I was a pastor, a youth pastor for 15 years, and planted a church, and I was married, and what's on my screensaver is my 3 kids.
That's cute. Thanks, everybody. And I noticed that some of you are already commenting questions, which is awesome. I'm gonna be the one asking my amazing team of folks questions, but really our desire is to get your questions answered today. So we'll definitely do our best to look at those as we're chatting, and there'll be some designated times as well. And let's see, I identify as gay, lesbian, or queer. I live near Pasadena, California. I thought I was really straight until college, and then I fell in love with a friend. And then that was me, similar to you, John. I struggled with my sexuality is the language that I found until I was 26. And then I still was closeted, but had started to accept myself at that point. And my kids and our dog Charlie are on my screensaver, along with my calendar and reminder for this event too. So, okay, so let's just jump in. Rob, let's start with you. And why did you decide to come out? Tell us a bit about that.
I can bring it back to a few statements that I've said over the years, and one of them was that misery was a really great motivator for me. I was internally just very, very miserable. But as a pastor, I had to have my life together from all appearances. And honestly, one day I was mowing the grass, and I just felt this peace come over me, that it was almost like one of those moments where you just feel that God was speaking to you, and he said, if you tell the truth, everything will be okay. And at that point, I had admitted to myself that I was gay. And I just knew that that's what I had to do, that I needed to kind of escape this lie that I had told myself and everyone else. And I needed to come out from underneath the shame of it. And so very shortly after that, I started telling some people, and then finally told my wife and the church that I was pastoring.
I love that it was just in this sort of mundane place of mowing your lawn that such a profound moment happened. Did anybody else have an experience like that, where sort of in the quietness of something like where you felt like, yeah, me neither.
Yeah. I think what's interesting when I hear other people's stories too, some people have always been afraid, maybe to come out because they have maybe believed that, God would maybe be mad or upset, or that this is a terrible thing that they couldn't let out of Pandora's box, so to speak. And, my story was really feeling a peace from God to come out and to say, if you tell the truth, like everything is going to be okay.
Who else had a peace from God? None of you.
I don't think, not right away. That's a
Okay.
nice story, Rob.
Yeah, that's, I was so goo goo gaga over Crystal that it was either like the hormones rushing over my brain or God, I don't know. If I felt that peace and in love, but I still didn't come out even though I felt that way.
I would say, even though I felt that peace, it didn't make it easy, paintbrush a nice path for me to follow that was like all roses. And many Christians decided that they were going to play the role of, being condemnation for me in my life.
Yeah, that's important to remember. Just because you had that, it wasn't like the red carpet was rolled out for you. John, when you think about your coming out experience, I think oftentimes we kind of rank those people who are like easier to come out and harder to come out. I know as I've worked with people, I usually tell folks, let's get your cheerleading squad around you first. So let's come out to the easiest people first, which I sort of accidentally did in my life. And then we're going to sort of like progressively go harder. And those cheerleaders can love you and support you as you do those harder folks in your life. But who were some of those harder folks for you?
Oh gosh. I would say my brother was a hard person to come out to. He looked up to me, my younger brother. He, looked up to me. We were kind of the best of friends growing up. And I wondered, would he think fondly of me still? Like, would we still be really good friends when I tell him this? That was a big fear of mine. And we were totally fine as a result of me coming out to him. And then I would say the hardest person to come out to was my dad. I came out to him the very last, at least like within my immediate family and friends. I remember once in high school, my sister had a good friend who was gay, and somehow my dad and my sister got in a huge argument about this friend. My sister is like an ally to like the 10th degree. And so she was advocating for her friend, and my dad, I don't remember all of the specifics, but he just had a really hard time with her friend. And I remember observing this from afar and thinking like, oh my God, if my dad knew that I feel the same way that her friend does, like, what's he gonna say about me? Like, they were having a terrible fight, like screaming, yelling fight. So anyway, I waited to he was the last one I came out to. And I waited until he had to pick me up. I was in college. I was like 22 at the time. I had come home from a trip, and he picked me up from the airport, and we had like an hour and a half in the car. And I was like, here's my chance. He's going to either have to drop me off somewhere, or he's going to take me all the way home. And I was like, Dad, I need to tell you something. I am gay. And I waited, and it was like the longest 5 minutes of my entire life. And he's like, well, I don't totally understand what all of that means, but I can say that I love you and you're my son, and that will never change. And I was not expecting that response from him, but it was like the most loving response. And I count myself very lucky because I have so many friends and clients who it's not the same way for them. And I know that my experience is somewhat of a unicorn experience compared to a lot of other people. But yeah.
Thanks. Do you have a relationship with your brother?
I do. And he's going through his own sexuality journey right now, which is kind of interesting to support him through that.
Yeah. Who else? Anyone else on the team? Your dad was the last one to come out too? Mine was, yeah. John, I also did mine in the car, but mine was on the way to the airport. So I was like, I guess I could, he's probably going to kick me out of the car, and I guess I could get a cab to the airport.
Yeah.
Which he did not, but I'm curious. This is, I hate this question, but I wanted to ask it. Were any of your worst fears confirmed? Molly, I think a part of coming out is all of those years, months, moments where we are spending so much energy and anxiety doing exactly what you talked about, John. And that is like listening to those conversations that we hear from somebody else, and like, oh, they said they watched that one show and there is that one gay character, so maybe like we do all of these like gymnastics to try to determine like what will happen. Will they still love me? Will I be accepted? And sometimes we're surprised in the good way, and sometimes we're not, and it's a painful way. So Molly, let's start with you. Were any of your worst fears confirmed?
Yeah, my immediate family had a great response, but my church family didn't. At the time, my best friend who I worked with, I was at her house all the time, who was married to the pastor, said, "You're not gay." And eventually when I was like, no, I am, and I'm going to pursue this relationship with a female, she said, you can no longer be alone with her daughter, my goddaughter, who I'd helped raise for 8 years. And then my pastor had to sit me down and said he'd like to counsel me through this. And I said, no, thank you. And they basically cut me off. And really losing my goddaughter was the biggest fear. And I haven't been allowed to see her for years now, except she messaged me on Instagram the other day, which was awesome. She's old enough now where she's like, hi, and she liked my videos. So that's like very cool. But that was super hard. They were my family were in San Diego, and my church family. And they basically said, if you go down this road, we are not going to let you be a part of our family anymore. So that was really hard. And there was a lot of grief. And that's kind of what I learned through that. A lot of grief. I had other great relationships. So you're holding both of those at the same time. Like, this is wonderful. I met the love of my life. I feel free. And wow, they just really rejected me. And I thought I was part of their family. And so, unfortunately, you kind of sometimes get both experiences.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I think that is such an important thing. And part of the exhaustion of it all is like, oftentimes there are both happening really painful things and like amazing, beautiful life that you've never had before, all at the same time. What about you, Alicia? Did any of your worst fears come true?
Yeah, I kind of had the opposite experience of Molly. At the time I was coming out, I had mostly really progressive people around me. So they were all pretty much fine with it, but my family was not. And so I have lost relationship with my dad and with some other people. I took a big road trip, like a coming out road trip through the South and the Midwest to see all my family around the time I was coming out. And I had a cousin who just had a baby and wouldn't let me hold the baby. And another family member just be kind of hostile and aggressive. So, yeah.
Have any of you also had experiences where people sort of protected their children from you? No, okay. Yeah, that's a thing you did, Rob.
Yeah, my nephew and niece, my brother and his wife, when my kids told my nephew and niece that I'm gay, there was a bit of this reaction, like, we did not want our kids to know that. Like they were protecting the kids because this was this terrible thing that they did not want their niece and nephew to know.
Mm.
So in that way, not from me seeing them, but I think there still probably was some sort of, I always kind of felt like there was this mistrust.
As a parent, I'm curious, do you like, if you think about some other topic, is that, I don't know, do you get that or is it, do you not?
I mean, if I took a portal into my evangelicalism, yes.
Yeah.
I scratch my head now and I think, gosh, how did I used to think that way? Because I think I've changed so much, and there was so much fear around so many things. Like it's like every turn you take, you're kind of like thinking there might be some sort of devil under that rock or some sort of evil pitfall over here. So you're just constantly aware and you're guarding your kids from those types of things. And I don't think that way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I do get wanting to protect their kids. I just kind of doubted that they needed to be protected from me.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, someone put in the comments they were worried about their niece and nephew, but they didn't really care. And I think that is often what ends up happening, or like what you said, Molly, people end up growing up and then they message their family member or their friend and they're like, why did you just drop out of my life when I was such and such age? And it's like, well, great, you're an adult now and we can actually talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
What about
it's usually there. I was going to say with kids, it's always surprising to me how they don't care when they find out, like, okay, well, like my nephews, when I got married, my sister made it a big thing. We're going to Auntie Molly and Auntie Sue's wedding, and they were waiting for it. And they're like, okay, can we go to Disneyland? Like who cares that it's two women? Like, and but the parents are stressed out and protecting, like, but the kids don't really care. See, it's an issue, which is always interesting.
My daughter was 7 when we finally started to talk about it. And we're sitting on the raft, out in the water in the summertime in Michigan. And she's asking me all these questions. And she says, Dad, is it kind of like Michael Jackson? And I'm going, what? What does Michael Jackson have to do with it? And she says, well, he tried really hard to be white. And maybe he should have just accepted the fact that he was a Black man. And I'm thinking, how does a 7-year-old come up with this kind of stuff? So kids just, they say the darndest things.
They really do. That's really incredible. I'm interested about surprises along the way. Kate, were there surprises in your coming out experience? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, that I really liked women, first of all.
The shock.
It's like, oh, this is really cool. Like, why haven't I been doing this sooner? So, but yeah, I think what I really didn't realize until after I came out was how much hiding impacted me in other areas of my life. I was pretty closed off, shut down, a little paranoid about just everything. And I didn't really like to get too close to people, and I just didn't understand why that was. And so since coming out, it feels like a weight is off of me, and it's something that you don't realize how heavy it is until it's not there anymore. And so that surprised me a lot, that I didn't have to pretend or hide or prioritize other people's opinions of me to try and fit into a narrative that I was never going to fit into. So yeah, that was a big shock. I think that, just being comfortable with who I was, I never thought that I would get to a point in my life where that was going to be the case. And so, I'm just really glad that even with all that I have been able to see the fullness of that on the other side of being out.
It sounds like you're saying you didn't actually realize how much energy like staying closeted and being isolated was actually taking.
Yeah. Yeah. I cared so much about what other people thought. And there was this, even before, you know, I kind of fully stepped into, yes, I'm gay, I'm attracted to women. I just felt like, why am I so uncomfortable like all the time? And while coming out was an uncomfortable process and scary, and like, yeah, this fear of like, okay, I could be rejected, I could be dismissed, I could be abandoned by people that I love and care about. But I think in choosing to go forward anyway, you're letting go of what other people think or feel, and you are stepping into what you think and what you feel and what you need from life and from others. And I think that that allowed me to really accept good things from other people without feeling like I needed to kind of keep them at bay.
I love how you highlighted the difference between caring about what you think about yourself versus what other people think about you. And I'm sure we all work with people who have this expectation, like, I know I shouldn't care what other people think about me. And it's like this kind of way that they end up feeling really bad. And I'm like, oh, listen, we all care. Okay. Like I care about what people think of me. Of course, I'm a person in the world. But there's a difference between being able to experience that you care what other people think and having that control you, and ultimately allowing what you think about you to be the most powerful element.
Yeah, it's really freeing.
Did any of you experience, Kate, you also used the word paranoid, and that I was like, oh my God, yes. Was anyone else paranoid when they were closeted or before they came out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was married, and we had tried an open relationship so that I could try and figure this out. And I was constantly terrified that somebody was gonna find out what was happening, and I had no idea what they were gonna think about that.
Gosh. I want to switch to answering a couple of your questions. So the first one, any recommendations on coming out at work? My work is fairly progressive, but it feels kind of odd to bring it up. However, I'm currently married with kids, so as my family changes, things are going to become more apparent. I guess it seems easier to come out in a non-work setting where things are more personal. Anybody have any thoughts about coming out at work?
I found that like to be a pretty healthy place to come out for me, because I'm like, okay, like, I mean, if you're gonna say something against me, that's gonna be problematic, right? Like there's HR for that reason, right? So it felt like, okay, like I can kind of beta test this with people who I see every day, but you know, again, like they're not my friends or family. So like if I lose out on, you know, Joe Schmo down the hallway from me, okay, you know. But if I get to have some practice here, maybe I'll be more confident in other areas.
That's good. It looked like maybe some of you were going to say something. I'm also curious about the interplay of like HR, and if anyone like went to HR first, and but feel free to answer. Rob, it looked like you were about to say something.
I was just gonna say that what you had said earlier, Candice, about, you know, getting your cheerleaders around you. I think that same thing kind of that same principle could happen at work too. That, you know, maybe you want to test the waters and just maybe tell a few closer confidence at work, and you know, kind of test the waters a little bit for yourself to say, okay. But certainly, you know, when all of us do therapy, you know, we look at the work of like Brene Brown, right, where she talks about the enemy of shame is vulnerability. And at some point, if we really want to kill that shame in our lives, we have to own our own narrative and our own story, and hold our head high and say, hey, here's my story. I happen to be a gay person living in a straight relationship, and I've just come out.
Mm.
And now that sounds so terribly frightening to say, oh, it's just easy, you just say it, right? But I think it's important for people to kind of have this understanding, like that could be the goal. Like someday I want to work towards getting there for myself, to say I want to hold my head high as a queer person and not feel shame anymore.
Mm. One of the first, we moved and we came out, and so I worked for a nonprofit when I was first coming out, and this girl made me cupcakes. I could not believe it. I just like tried not to bawl my eyes out, like, because I'd come from a seminary where we were hiding, and then here's this girl that's got cupcakes in the kitchen. It was surprising and really sweet.
I think also you can slide it in there if you're dating someone. You could just say, over the weekend, me and my girlfriend, or me and my wife, and make it kind of breezy that way. And then you don't have to necessarily have a formal sit down with all of your coworkers to say, well, I want to, and have that coming out. You can just make it part of a conversation if it's comfortable. If you work at a Christian organization, I say someone put that in the chat. That's a different situation. So.
It is. Yeah. In that case, you're probably going to have to take the time and grieve and find a new job. Someone asked about cheerleaders. We brought up cheerleaders. How did you decide to find out who your cheerleaders were? I don't know where to start in my journey of coming out as a trans non-binary person. Anybody have advice on picking those cheerleaders?
Like testing the waters. So like if you're reading a book about trans theology or something like that, maybe mentioning that to some people and asking if they've read that book, or just kind of bringing stuff up casually in conversation and seeing how your friends react, and then it could evolve from there into an opportunity to share a little bit more personally about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one thing as queer people that we all do, like whether we are conscious of it or not, is this like a form of risk assessment. Like we're always assessing the risk. Is the risk involved if I were to tell this person or that person or this person? And maybe recognizing that there are different levels of that as well. Like Alicia was saying, you can talk about a TV show, like, oh, have you seen Queer Eye, or a movie that has a non-binary person in it? And maybe that's a more helpful, natural way to kind of start some sort of conversation, or at least test the waters and seeing how people react. So you don't necessarily have to take that huge step of vulnerability and saying like, this is my truth. You can kind of do it in maybe phases, and that might feel a little bit more helpful, supportive to you.
I like that. Another question. I just realized I wasn't straight a couple months ago, but my partner has been out for a while. How do I deal with the issue of coming out while also respecting their identity?
When I first started coming out as an adult, I started dating someone who, she'd been married to another woman before. I'm assuming that's what the question meant, that they're dating someone now. But I just asked them to like give me some time and give me some space with this process, and that there might be steps that I need to take to kind of acclimate, but I'm just looking for grace and understanding as I'm wrestling with that. And it was something that they were really like willing to do, which allowed me to feel safe enough to be in that relationship with them, but also have my own process in the meantime.
That's good.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like the starting point is a conversation with the person you're dating about what they're most comfortable with and what they need in that process, and then also owning what you need as well, which may be to be seen and known for who you are, and how do you find a middle ground and what feels safe at any given moment, and continually renegotiating that.
I love when there's something like I'll be asking or thinking of this question, and really the answer is like, oh, maybe you and Crystal should just talk about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, communication. That's right. Okay. Let's see. I really want to get to these questions. Okay. How would you speak encouragement to those who aren't cisgender, or those who have had attraction to those not in the normal sense? I am a cis male attracted to other men. Speak encouragement. Anybody? I'm not quite sure exactly what the normal means. Oh, where did it go? There it is. I guess anybody have thoughts on trans and non-binary folks, if there's anything different that you might add? Or
I think it's just we're so indoctrinated into like this binary kind of system, right? Like and attraction is such a beautiful thing, and it's not something that you really choose, right? I don't say I want to be attracted to you, so I'm going to will myself to be attracted. You just are. If we all showed up at the Baskin Robbins, we might be surprised that I would pick mint chocolate chip, but Candice, what would you pick?
Chocolate chip.
Chocolate chips, but I like a little mint in mine. So it's important to honor your preferences, and I think and some of the work that I like to do with people is how much have we ignored our own selves, right? Like I think we have like this unique physiology that says I like to be touched in this way, or I like to express myself in this way, and we have some sort of inner voice that says no, you're not allowed to do that. And I think it's almost as if we're putting this big, it's almost like, if I can use this little bit gross analogy, it's like a clogged pore, right? It gets clogged up and causes an infection. And it's much better when our feelings and our emotions, the things that feel really natural to us, kind of just are able to just kind of flow, and we have really clear skin.
That was so good. Yes, Rob. except for the poor part. That was kind of gross, but I liked everything else you said.
So my encouragement is to this anonymous person who wrote this message is continue to do the work to be courageous, to be yourself, and to speak your truth, and find. I often tell people, don't water dead plants in your life, right? So like if you keep pursuing a relationship that's not growing, that's not producing some sort of fruit or flower, observe those kinds of things and say, all right, this is an investment that I'm making, that there's nothing really happening in this relationship. Look for those people who, when you are kind to them, they're kind back to you. Look for those people that, hey, when you call them, they're taking the step to call you because they like you, they miss you, and find those kind of like reciprocal relationships in your life.
That's really good. I want to talk a little bit about relationships, and then we'll get back to the Q&A board. I think it's a really common experience to have experienced closeted relationships. I know I was in a significant relationship that was closeted. Alicia, I wonder, I know this is a big question, but could you tell us a little bit about your experiences being in a closeted relationship?
Yeah, so I had first started trying to date women while I was married to a man, and we had decided to open up our relationship so I could try and figure this out and figure out if there was a way that we could still make our marriage work. And And, I met some interesting people. One relationship was not very emotionally deep, but there was another person I met that I actually could have seen a future with. And she had been out for quite a while, actually. And actually it was a real challenge for me. It was part of why I wanted to come out eventually. That relationship didn't last very long, but just feeling like if I met somebody I was really excited about and I wanted to be with that person, that I didn't want to have to hide that, and I didn't want them to have to be a hidden secret. And I think when I was in a relationship with that person, I really felt maybe a little paranoid that would be a liability in the relationship, that they wouldn't be able to be celebrated as an important part of my life. So I'd say it was actually quite challenging and a big motivator for coming out.
Did anybody experience the conflict or fear around like being a liar or betraying folks that were close to you? No.
I think I felt
did.
that a little bit, like with my friends, when I finally did come out, I think they were all very surprised to find out that I had been exploring this for a lot longer than they knew. And I think I did feel a bit like there was just this huge chunk of myself and my life that I had hidden from them for so long. Which it felt great for that to be seen, but it also felt awful that they couldn't have been a part of that.
Yeah, I know that was a big part of some of both Crystal and I's closest friends and family, was that sense of, kind of their own grief of going back in history and being like, wait a second, at that one vacation, were you guys and then what about that conversation we had? And remember that time you said you went on a date with a guy? Did you really go out with a guy? Like, just that the shock of going through the past and trying to actually see what was really going on. And of course, not feeling like I wanted to lie, but needing to stay safe. Okay, this person says, I'm a college student who wants to come out to my family, but I'm worried because they are conservative Christians. Any tips? It's a big one. John, anything that comes to your mind?
I would say, are you connected to the Christian Closet already? And if not, maybe one of us could support you on that journey. But I also think it's important to have allies next to you. So whether that is like seeking therapy or, wellness coaching, or being able to lean on close, trusted friends, I think that that's a really important part of that whole journey of coming out to conservative Christian family members. There's a lot of risk that can be there. You just don't know how people will react sometimes. I also think that as humans, we are bad estimators. We either overestimate or we underestimate, and it's very seldom that we like hit it right on the money. And so taking that into consideration too, that perhaps your biggest fear, it may be a possibility, but it may not be the only possibility. And also be gentle with yourself. The coming out journey looks so different to every person. And some people it's very celebratory, and for some people there's a lot of grief attached to it, but both of those experiences are valid and important. And one does not diminish the other. They're both important experiences. But I think for all of us, we have so many clients that we have connected with either in the past or even currently who are walking that same journey. And I consider myself so privileged to be able to journey alongside them. I can't come out for them, but I can be there as some sort of stabilizing pillar to say, let's process, or bring your parent into the session with us and that we can come out to them together. Kind of a thing.
That's good. What about John or anyone, the idea of should folks bring in the Bible, theology? What if their family, often will say like, we love you, but you know what the Bible says. How do you advise and walk with people through those kinds of questions?
I always like to let people know or give them permission that they don't have to debate the Bible with their family. And it often doesn't go well, or it's just not helpful, usually because you know where they're coming from. So there's some really good books for parents. You can say, here's some resources to kind of like, to understand where I'm coming from, but I'm not going to be the person to debate this with you. And that it's okay to set that boundary. And so you can come out and then you can walk away and say, I can't talk about this right now. I'm not going to debate it right now. So I think that sometimes that helps to know that you don't have to get stuck there, that you can leave.
I like to tell clients, kind of reframe the coming out process to I'm letting you in, right? Instead of I'm coming out to everybody, I'm letting you know something that I've known about myself for a long time. So I'm really letting you in. And I love what Molly's saying. I give the same kind of advice to my clients, that it's never, you never want to get into this argument, with your parents, because you're studying so much theology and now you're having the side A, side B conversation. And if the simpler you can put it to your family and just say, hey, I wanted you to just know something about me. And what I'm really hopeful for is that you will love me just like Jesus would love me. And, call them to just act lovingly to you. And when they are loving to you, try to learn some boundaries with your family to say, I don't deserve to be treated this way. And those are the really hard things to figure out.
I like to encourage people to set up something for right afterwards with people that are supportive. If it goes poorly or if it's hurtful, you're going to need that support. But even if it goes really well, it's likely going to be a very emotional experience. And it can be really helpful to have people to process that with right afterwards. And if you're worried about safety, particularly if you're doing it in person, having a safety plan and a place to go afterwards can be really important.
Good. Yeah. This person is going to be coming out on Facebook, which I just love when people allow themselves to come out in lots of different ways, that there is not a more brave, a best way. Face-to-face is not, superior to a letter or something like that. I think that's some BS that people put out there. There's no pressure. But anyways, this person's coming out on Facebook. Have you guys, they're wanting to know, like, should they, not look at the notifications? Any advice specific to social media that you all have gleaned along the way?
I had one client come out online and put a kind of a disclaimer of like, I may not respond to everyone's response kind of thing, like, or I'm not going to respond to anyone. I can't remember how they said it. It was very well worded, not like my answer right now, but something like a disclaimer saying,
a boundary.
I'm not, thank you. A boundary in your like coming out thing, and then you don't have to look at them unless you want to, and you don't have to reply unless you really want to. So it's one idea.
That's good. Yeah, that's what I usually tell people, is at the end to put up whatever the boundary is, and they don't have to say like, I'm putting up a boundary, but to just simply say, yeah, I won't be reading these. I also really just, if you have encouraging comments, I'd love to hear them. But if this is something that you're sad about or uncomfortable, please don't comment, and go and put it in your journal or take a bike ride. Just kidding. Somebody asked about book recommendations about really conservative parents. So some of those books, like the Justin Lee book, and they were saying that are too liberal. So I have recently found Embracing the Journey. They have a book, a workbook, a ministry, small groups for parents. And they are awesome and totally for conservative people, really, really conservative people. So have them check out Embracing the Journey. There is a question for Kate. Are you ready, Kate?
Yeah.
I struggle with similar things to what you talked about, the not being able to get close to people. Did that start changing for you after coming out to close friends and family? Or did that change when you were fully out? I'm out to family and friends, but not publicly, and still really struggle with getting close to people.
Yeah, I think, everyone's experience of that is going to be different, obviously. But for me, I think because it was such a vulnerable act to come out, and particularly with friends or socially who I don't know what, I really wasn't sure how they were going to respond, right? They kind of more conservative leaning or, just, I really wasn't sure. But when again, I took that kind of risk and I was affirmed by that person, it allowed me to feel so much more connected. And allowed me to feel like, okay, like I can actually learn how to take these steps and trust people, and it can go okay, right? And maybe not every situation is going to go okay, and I don't have to like go down that path anymore with that person if that's the case. But again, just by the virtue of stepping into who I am, I'm more confident in what I have to offer in relationships and what I want out of the people that are going to be in my life. And it makes me care a lot less about the people who don't want to be in my life or don't care to, affirm me, who I am.
Anybody else see, thanks, Kate, lasting impacts on like their comfortability or ability to be close to people even after coming out?
I don't know that I felt like I noticed it, but I had a friend make a comment once who had known me before I came out and afterwards, and she said, "You're just a much more relaxed and freer version of yourself now."
That's cool. I think so. Anyone that knows the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 6 with a wing 5, and so I think a combination of that and having been closeted, there are still times socially where I have to remind myself in a conversation, like, okay, now it's time to share something about yourself. I just got so used to that, and that as an Enneagram 6, I naturally sort of just have a low level anxiety, and so I have those list kind of people in my head that I'm safe with, and practice letting myself be known, and socially often remind myself even before going out, okay, Candice, like ask questions, but don't do that the whole time, like share of yourself too. So I want to, we're going to switch a little bit and then go back to the questions, because therapy was mentioned. Obviously, we're all therapists. That's what we do at the Christian Closet. Therapy was a huge part of my process and still is. I mean, I love therapy. I am a therapist. But specifically when it comes to coming out, Molly, did therapy play a role for you? And if so, what was that role?
I was able to find an affirming therapist, which made a huge difference. And I think, obviously I'm a therapist too, so I think everyone should go, but I think if you're able to find someone that doesn't have an agenda and will just really let you talk through all the aspects of all of that's involved in coming out, it really it can be so helpful just to not have to defend yourself, not have to worry about what they think, that you can just talk it all through. The thing I love about, the work we do is that people can also talk through what they think and what they believe or what they thought they believed about God. So my therapist was also a very affirming Christian. So to be able to have that aspect as well, so you can talk about yourself, talk about what you're scared others are going to do or say, or what they do, and then I said do, and God, and what you think and believe about God. So I think it's just such a good, safe space, and it was really, really helpful for me to have that.
Anybody else have therapy as a big part of their process of self-acceptance and coming out? Yeah, what about you, Alicia?
I was already seeing a Christian therapist when I had the big realization, and she was not affirming. And so we kind of went down the road of like, maybe this is trauma, like people have daddy issues, maybe this is mommy issues. And we went down that whole road.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I've got trauma, let's work on it. And what I found was that the more I did the work, and it was good work that I did, but the more I did that work, the stronger my attraction for women got. And then I realized, okay, this is not going away, and decided to stop seeing that therapist. And I found a queer therapist, and so that was a big part of. We did a lot of work on my identity, and because I felt so unsteady in my identity at that point. I thought I knew who I was, and then I thought I didn't know who I was, and realized, no, actually I am the same person and more. And so it was really helpful in becoming secure in myself again, which helps me then be able to put that out into the world.
I love how you just said that. And also I love that first therapist, like you still went where you needed to go, there was no stopping the path of really letting it be revealed of more of who you were. Okay. So any thoughts on when you can stop coming out? I feel like it's still very much an apology and big news whenever in a new environment. I don't want to anymore. I'm tired of having the conversation, but I'm proud and comfortable of myself. I just feel like my sexuality is the least exciting thing about me. So I'm done having to disclose and use it as a main characteristic for my life. Any thoughts on like the constant coming out, or how to navigate that? Do any of you relate to a feeling of like feeling like you have to come out all the time?
And I similarly, like I've stopped doing that as well. Like, so I'll mention a girlfriend, or I'll mention dating women, or, I'll make casual statements as I would kind of naturally in any other context, right? In a heteronormative kind of context. And I don't like apologize for that. I don't delve into that. Because it is normal, right? It's not a spectacle, it's my life. And so I get to have as normal a conversation about that as anyone else would, without that being weird or different.
I like that. Any suggestions for navigating trauma associated with coming out? Helpful resources for someone who can't afford therapy. When I came out, I lost all of my church denomination support. My purpose, my identity was wrapped up in those for 10 years.
I know that QCF has some small groups that are starting, I think in February, which that would be a great place to meet some other queer Christians. So.
Plug for Alicia is starting a therapy support process group February 8th. There is a cost, but it's much lower than what therapy would cost. I said February 8th. Yes. So anyone in the coming out process, that would be a good group for you.
I would also make a suggestion too, because some people, when someone says I can't afford to do therapy, let me make a suggestion. I know that if in the state that you live, if there's a group counseling office that's there, oftentimes they'll have interns. And so if you find a group counseling office that's nearby, and that it's affirming, like, maybe you look for that little rainbow triangle on their logo somewhere that says they were a safe space for queer people. A lot of times they'll have interns who are training under supervision. Sometimes interns can be the best counselors because they just are so engaged because they just want to connect with you. And so that could be a real great resource. And oftentimes seeing an intern is either free or just very, very low cost.
Smart. That's really good. I wonder, John, I want to talk about God a little bit, and anyone can chime in, but I wanted to hear from you a bit, John, about how coming out and accepting yourself impacted your relationship with God.
Yeah. Growing up in the church, you always hear, like God is love. And I think that that's supposed to mean something so like peace giving in that space. But as a person who had this like deep, dark secret at the time, it also felt like God was like a vicious, like unfair ruler. Like, why would he make me suffer in this way? And why won't he like take this away from me? Like, I'm so glad I don't think that anymore. But at the time I was like 13, 14, 15. And I was like, I'm praying my hardest to be saved from my same-sex attraction, and God is not delivering me from that. Like it's even hard to like say those words now because I'm like, that's so in the past, but it was my reality at that time. So it was weird to be able to say like, okay, if God is love, why does it also feel like he is not someone that I would want to be friends with or be connected to? He doesn't feel like a very loving person. And I guess I'm using the pronoun he. They don't feel like a very loving person in that way. So coming out, being able to accept myself, there was a way in which it allowed me to befriend God in such a wonderful way that was super powerful. It was like, oh, in coming out to myself, accepting myself, there's a way in which like I was able to quiet down all of those other really negative and toxic theology experiences that I had, and be able to get to know God is loving and he loves me, they love me. And it's a very peace-giving experience, but it was a journey to get to that place. It was a journey to get to that place. So, but yeah.
Anybody else have thoughts on the God element and accepting themselves and coming out? I mean, I know for myself and a lot of people that I work with, it is one of the biggest pieces. And there are people who have experienced the opposite of what I experienced, but in my first kiss with a woman who happens to be my wife now, it was like the moment of, oh my God, everyone had been wrong. I had been wrong. Feeling that peace, feeling that affirmation, feeling God in that space, feeling the Holy Spirit. I mean, if like in my mind, like there was wind and my hair was going around and like I was floating. It was a second and we were in a gas station parking lot. So I'm sure that it wasn't quite like that. But I'm so grateful for that. And I realize it's, like I said, I know a lot of folks don't have such an affirming sense of God in that kind of experience. But for me, when I finally came out, it's been a process of the more that I come out, the like gayer I am, the more I feel connected to God, the more I feel like I'm reflecting God and God's spirit is in me, and like pleasure in gay sex and all like these places that people have said like God is not. I'm like, oh no, like God is extra. And reading the Bible through the queer lens is exciting and different. And so I would say God has gotten bigger, not as small, but it's taken time. I want to read one of these questions. Any ideas on how to deal with conflict feelings about coming out as a demisexual ace spectrum? I identify as queer and I would not like to censor myself or my experiences, but I'll most likely end up with someone from the opposite sex. So I am sure that most people wouldn't think there's a point of me coming out. Plus the ace community is very misunderstood. So I would imagine there's a lot of folks who are asking that question. Hey, I might look cisgendered or straight on the outside because of who I'm partnered with or whatever. Is there a point of coming out? Any thoughts? Rob?
Yeah, I would say, again, if you frame that as letting people in, again, to use the reference from Brene Brown, that, you know, vulnerability it breeds connection. And so I don't think that everyone needs to know your story. You get to decide what's, you know, there's a big difference between a secret and just privacy. And so you get to kind of decide like who you're going to let in. And that's probably really good boundaries to say, all right, who do I let into my life, and who is not safe for me to let in? You know, I think a lot of times us evangelical Christians, you know, we just think that we're supposed to just let everybody in, and we're like Jesus, and the bad people just nail us to the cross, and we're just supposed to take it and suffer because that's what we do. And so a lot of the work that I think I had to do for myself was creating those boundaries to say, it's okay to say no to people. It's okay to hold people at a distance. And for me to learn the skill to determine who's safe and who's not safe, and who I'm going to let in and who I'm not going to let in. So I would say don't overthink it, and you'll know when it's important to allow somebody in because you care about them and you want them to know something really vulnerable about you. And vulnerability breeds the kind of connection that you want to have as your relationship deepens.
That's good. I like that. Speaking of boundaries, I'm sure we talk a little bit about boundaries in our work with people. Just kidding. Boundaries is so huge. This person asked, how do you create healthy boundaries for family, friends, colleagues that are not affirming if they want to constantly be negative or combative towards you after you go public with your sexuality? At what point is it okay to block someone or choose to no longer have contact for your own mental well-being? That's a good one. Tough.
Yeah. I relate to that question. I think we probably all do on some form or fashion. Those are such hard decisions to have to make, and sometimes they are the most necessary to make. I think being able to identify to yourself what you're willing to put up with and what you're unwilling to put up with, which can be hard. Understanding the difference between passive, assertive, and aggressive communication. Passive means what you say isn't more important than what I say. Aggressive is what I say is way more important than what you say. And assertive is what I say is important and what you say is important, and trying to like implement that in, you know, to some form or fashion. Boundaries are also, when we think of boundaries, we think of it like being a wall that separates you from something else. But I think that's a misconception sometimes, because boundaries also allow you to communicate to other people where the door is, to enter into communication, to relationship with you. It doesn't always have to be a wall. It can be a door that allows people to know you can't enter in any way that you choose. You can enter in through this door though. And I would love to engage with you in that way, as long as you're, you know, willing to do that. And some people are, and some people are not. And I think those people who are unwilling to abide by the boundaries you have put up, I think that that's when those hard decisions need to be made. If they're unwilling to respect my boundaries, then I think it's time for me to say goodbye or to press pause on this relationship, because it's doing more harm than good at that point. But that's such a tough place to be.
Yeah. Oh, I want to replay a lot of what you just said. I wish I was like getting my pen, like, what John say?
Yeah.
So good. Rob, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I love that. I love the analogy of just, hey, here's my door, and I want you to walk through it. But if you keep trying to kick my windows in, you know, I'm not gonna. I have to say no. I think sometimes people do get into this all or nothing kind of thing too, and you know, sometimes if you think about it in percentages, so let's say it's very painful for you to see your family, but you still want them in your life. So instead of, you know, showing up at the family Christmas party and staying all day, maybe you might set a boundary and say, hey, I'm going to show up for 1 hour. And I really want to see everyone. And then you just say, I have other plans later today. And, you know, I'm going to just pop in and say hello to everyone because I miss you and I love you. But and then you're going to exit. So sometimes those kind of strategies can work too for people.
Yeah. And I found that if people don't know you're setting a boundary, they respond a lot better. So there's one way of doing that, Rob, and saying, I'm setting a boundary and I will only be attending for 1 hour because you all are assholes.
Yeah.
I tried really hard not to cuss. And that's a like, oh, bristle and, you know, versus like what you said. I love you all. I'm excited to see you. I'll unfortunately only be able to come for an hour, but I'm really looking forward to that hour with you.
Yep.
Really a different, probably those hearing it are going to experience it much different. I don't want to move on too quickly from this one. Just want to make sure because it's so important. Anybody else have thoughts on boundaries? Especially this person, we have a question like, and this relates, I think, so we might not have new thoughts, but I think there's a fear of being the bad guy or bad gal or bad person, right? Like you're the uptight, boundaried family member who's the only person who has issues, you know, with the way we do family or something like that.
I think that people are a lot of times give pushback. You're going to set a boundary and you're going to get pushback from family or friends. And sometimes that's normal. And someone if they're unhealthy or toxic, they're going to be mean or manipulative or make you feel guilty for setting that and just keep setting it. And it's almost like a little kid who, you know, has a little temper tantrum when you tell them no. You just keep telling them no, and eventually they kind of get the picture, or you're going to have to just really pull back. So if you get a bad reaction when you set a boundary with a family member or a friend, if they get bad reaction, don't just keep doing it. Next time they ask, no, please don't mention that. Please don't talk about that again. I don't want to have this conversation if you're going to talk about that again. And just be persistent, even if they have a little temper tantrum for a minute.
Avoiding works too. Some of the positives, Alicia, I know you did find someone that you're spending your life with. What are some of the things about your life that are surprising and beautiful and wonderful about your life now that you hadn't anticipated that would be?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about like my faith and my spirituality, it's kind of amazing that like all the kind of trite things that I had grown up like aspiring to, I find are true in my life now. So things like peace that passes understanding, you know, like when I've gone through really hard times and like I should be freaking out right now, but actually I feel quite a bit of peace right now. Things like that. That was really surprising, and I think that came through having to go through fighting so hard to know what I believe, and that's unshakable at that point, and letting go of things that just didn't serve me well, and then finding finding a person to share my life with. And when I look, sometimes I'm just like sitting around my house, like looking at my crazy little blended animal family that we have. We have so many animals, but I love it. And it's like what I was wanting, what I had wanted. And we go on adventures and we do all kinds of fun things together, not quite as much in the winter in the middle of a pandemic, but you know, and having somebody to lean into the hard stuff with, and somebody to carry the hard stuff with. Yeah, and I will give a little shout out to my family who's not here and not watching because they're not affirming, but my mom put my partner's name on our Christmas presents this year, which is a huge deal. Yeah, so yeah, I know. Got to celebrate it. So
Absolutely. That's amazing. How many animals do you guys have?
we have 3 dogs, a cat, and a fish. And then we, not currently because I have one old dog that can't handle it, but we like to have fosters come in and out as well. So we can have as many as 5 dogs. So, no, 4 dogs sometimes.
That's amazing. And how long did it take your mom to get to this point of putting both of your names on the Christmas presents?
Yeah, it's been 7 years. It'll be 7 years next month that I told her. And when I told her, I watched her like visibly deflate. I did it over video. And yeah, she visibly deflated. So it's been a journey. But yeah.
Appreciate that. It can sometimes feel like there's not going to be any movement, but they're going through their own process, and that grief can take years. Anybody else? What about you, Molly? Any parts of your life that you were like didn't imagine that you'd get to have as part of your life that you do now?
Yeah, I think when I met my now wife, it really felt hopeless at one point. Like I can't have God and her. Like that just didn't seem like it would ever be an option. That I had to choose one, and to just keep moving through that to now like be married for 4 years and really feel the love that I'd always wanted and everyone has always talked about. And I got married when I was 39. And so I thought I was going to be single forever. And so really that I just am amazed sometimes. I also think getting to do this work is all. I never thought I would get to be on the other side too, where I'm helping people walk through the same thing. And I love how, God will do that, where take the hardest part and then later you find yourself helping someone and going, no, you can do this. It is possible. I did it. Like we can be your being other people's cheerleaders. And so those are a couple of things I just never thought when I was in the thick of it. Like you just don't know, you don't think it's going to be that good on the other side, and it does. It gets there. You're able to get there.
That's true. Anything come up for anyone else that you want to share? So I would like to end with everybody sharing sort of 2 things come to mind, the top 2 or the middle 2 or whatever, 2 things that comes to your mind when you work with folks who are coming out and in that process. What are 2 either pieces of advice or 2 things that often come up in your work with folks? John, anything? Let's start with you.
Yeah. I probably the 2 most important things I say is the coming out journey is so unique to every person. So you might see someone's coming out journey portrayed in a book or a movie, and it might feel like that's the only way that I can come out in these like really big, explosive ways. And some people choose to do that, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean that that's how everyone has to come out. And whatever way you choose to come out is like the way to come out. The other thing I often say is be gentle with yourself and know that it is such an incredibly brave thing to do. And I say brave in the sense of like what Brene Brown says, that bravery is not the absence of fear, but it is being scared shitless and showing up anyway. I think coming out is so brave. Yeah, and it's so unique to everyone.
It's good. I love that. The first thing you said, like, it's so unique to everyone. I know there was a comment of someone who kind of shared like the opposite story to me, like they actually vomited after a first kiss, and how scary that must have been. And so there's such a wide spectrum of experiences. There's that movie, oh Lord, The Happiest Season. And I love how they're like, the one thing we all have in common is like that feeling before you come out, that like, I am so, oh my God, I'm going on a roller coaster, I'm jumping off of a cliff, I don't know what's going to happen. We have that in common, but everything else after that is as unique as you are, as unique as your friends and family are. And it's a unique experience for everyone. What about you, Alicia? What are the top two?
Yeah, I think definitely having your cheerleaders. I talk with people a lot about that, like how important it is to build up a community of people that love you and support you, because then it makes I think it can always be terrifying to say that the first time out loud to somebody really close to you, but if you know you have people who have your back that are waiting to support you and love you and cheer you on, it may hurt if people don't accept you, but it can soften the blow or at least provide some comfort. So that's one. And then something I read before I came out that I love and pass on to people is the quote that says, "People will surprise you, and let them." And I think we just don't know how people are going to react. And I love about that like you put it out there and people get to have their reactions, whatever that is. And then you go from there and you figure out where to go, but kind of going into it, maybe not with a lot of expectation about how people are going to respond. So then it just gets to be what it is.
I like that. Rob?
Oh man, I think for me, I thought that I would just be a different person. Like there was so much pent up anxiety and so much hiding and so much all this other stuff. And when it came out, it was like this explosion. Like I just let go and I just cried and cried and cried and cried. And I look back and it's a really great feeling to finally love yourself. And I just want to, my goal is to, I guess, give people hope, like that you can love yourself, and that it's worth the fight, to get through the shame and work through the shame and work through the pain, because there is hope on the other side for you to live like this really full life that maybe you always observed everybody else living while you felt like you're just a shell of yourself. And I have experienced that, and I've walked with people who have gone through the fire of all of that and come out on the other side like just shining. And I think it's important that it's to let people know that it's worth it.
I love that. We should make t-shirts that just say it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Kate?
Yeah, I really find it amazing, even though I'm trained as a therapist, just to work with people and see their process. What we don't realize is there's so many things that come before making a choice to come out. It's not just like we get up one day and we do it, right? We're thinking about it. We're thinking about it a lot. A lot of times we have a lot of irrational fears, along with some very real ones. And so the act of talking about it actually gradually exposes you to that fear and makes you more confident. You talk about plans, you come up with safety plans, you review, what financial hardships might come of this, and how can I do this safely, and how can I do this confidently? And so I think that that's something that's just so remarkable to me, that there can be a safe way to do this really terrifying thing. And doing that in the context of a relationship or in group or in therapy, I think is just like such a valuable way to get there. Secondly, yeah, I just being on the other side of it, again, there is a fullness that I see people experience. It doesn't mean that life is totally better, or that things don't suck, or that mental health problems don't exist. Like, of course they do, right? Of course the world still sucks sometimes, and life is really, really hard. But when you get to do that as yourself, it just makes it just a little bit easier. And why not make things a little bit easier by being who you are? So.
Yeah, that also could go on a shirt. Why not make things a little easier by being who you are? Molly?
I would say the first thing I tell people a lot is that you don't always have to come out, like kind of like John was saying, like everyone else does, but you also don't have to come out in person to people. I think sometimes people need the permission to, like, you can send an email, you can send a letter, you can send a text. Those are like okay ways to do that, even to family, if that's the safest way. So, and the other thing that I use an analogy of a ladder when you're coming out, like you have steps. You don't have to rush to the top of the ladder and tell everybody that you're gay. You can, and some people do that and it goes well, but you can also take one step at a time. Start with someone who's really safe and try it out. If you take a couple more steps and it's unsafe, come back down the ladder. And so it's a gradual, and some people have like extension ladders. Some people might have like a 2-foot high ladder, but you get to go at your own pace with what feels safe. And you can go up and down it as needed. So those are my 2 things.
I like it. Oh, it's so good. I wish that we could hear everybody, because I would make you all endure the embarrassment of having this room full of people clap for you, because I'm just so grateful to get to know each of you and to have you a part of the Christian Closet. Like, you're just amazing clinicians and people. And I'm like, how did I get so freaking lucky? And so I know everyone that got to listen is, they're lucky to have gotten that. And please reach out, thechristiancloset.com. You can fill out a contact form. We are on all the social medias. Molly and I also are part-time TikTok stars. So feel free to follow our road to fame on there. But our website is the easiest place to get a hold of us. And truly, it's our pleasure to get to journey with each and every one of you. So that's it for us. Bye, everybody.